She announced, "I'm not attracted to you anymore since you got laid off. I need a provider." I replied, "I completely understand." Then I accepted the remote job offer for $300 in tech that I'd been hiding. When she saw my LinkedIn update and tried to reconcile after telling everyone I was unemployed. Ever wonder what it feels like to watch someone dig their own social grave with a backhoe while you stand there with the world's comfiest lawn chair and a margarita? Let me tell you, it's better than therapy. And where I live, therapy costs $200 an hour. So here's how my relationship imploded, then reconstructed itself into a monument to karma that would make a Buddhist monk high-five me. I, 34M, had been dating Rachel, 32F, for just over 2 years. We met at a friend's housewarming party, where she spent 45 minutes explaining why Qley is actually underrated. They're not. Before I finally got her number. The chemistry was immediate, and we moved in together after 9 months. Our lease in Chicago was under both our names, with rent split proportionally to our incomes. I paid 60%, she paid 40%. Rachel worked in pharmaceutical sales, which she reminded everyone of within 4 minutes of meeting them. I was a senior developer at a mid-sized fintech company called Money Matrix. Not the real name, but close enough. My job was fine. Not amazing, not terrible. Just fine. The pay was decent, the work was occasionally interesting, and my boss only made me contemplate a career change about once a month. Then came the tech layoffs of 2023. One grim Tuesday in March, our entire office got an early morning Slack message calling for an all-hands meeting at 9:30. Never in the history of corporate America has an unexpected all-hands meeting brought good news. It's like when a doctor says, "We need to talk about your test results." They're not calling to tell you that you have exceptionally attractive blood cells. Sure enough, our CEO appeared on screen looking like he was reading a hostage statement. Market conditions, strategic restructuring, tough decisions, valued team members. The corporate equivalent of, "It's not you, it's me." By 10:15, a third of the company, including yours truly, had been impacted, corporate speak, for thrown into the void. I wasn't particularly devastated. I had a decent emergency fund, some promising leads already, and the job market, while not great, wasn't apocalyptic. What I didn't expect was Rachel's reaction. The first week was fine. She was supportive, helped me update my resume, brought home my favorite takeout. But as week 2 rolled into week 3, I noticed a shift. The "you'll find something soon" comments took on a slight edge. The "maybe you should just take anything for now" suggestions became more frequent. By week 3, the supportiveness had given way to thinly veiled irritation. During this 3rd week of unemployment, while Rachel was at a work conference in Phoenix, I had a final interview with TechVault, a cybersecurity company that had been recruiting me since before the layoffs. We'd been in discussions for nearly 2 months, but the process accelerated once they heard I was suddenly available. The interview went exceptionally well, and they made an offer that nearly made me fall out of my chair. $300,000 base salary, plus stock options, full remote work, and a signing bonus that would cover our rent for 6 months. I was thrilled, but didn't immediately accept for 2 reasons. First, I was negotiating some details about the equity package. Second, Rachel and I had always discussed major life decisions together, and I wanted to share the news in person when she returned from her conference rather than over the phone. I thought it would be a moment of relief for both of us. Honey, not only did I bounce back from being laid off, I tripled my salary. Rachel returned from Phoenix on a Thursday, and I planned to tell her about the offer over dinner that weekend. But by Friday evening, now entering week 4 of unemployment, something had clearly shifted in her attitude. I was sitting on our couch, half-heartedly looking at job postings while secretly drafting a counteroffer email to TechVault when Rachel came home from work. She didn't say hello. Instead, she dropped her bag on the counter with a deliberate thud and stared at me like I was a mysterious stain on her favorite shirt. "We need to talk," she said. In the history of relationships, no good conversation has ever started with those 4 words. She sat on the opposite end of the couch, smoothed her skirt in a way that suggested she was preparing for a formal presentation, and took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, in the same tone one might use to announce a terminal diagnosis. and I've realized something important about myself. I closed my laptop, already knowing whatever came next would require my full attention. I need a provider, she said, her chin tilting up slightly. I've always seen myself with someone successful, someone established. When we met, you had a good job, a career path. But now, she gestured vaguely at me, as if my unemployment was a visible skin condition. Are you breaking up with me because I got laid off? I asked, more curious than hurt. It's not just the job, she said, though her expression suggested it was absolutely just the job. I've realized I'm not attracted to you anymore. Physical attraction is tied to success for me. It's just how I'm wired. She softened her tone slightly. I care about you, but I need financial stability in a partner. This situation has made me realize that. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. You're saying that me losing my job in a mass layoff has made me physically unattractive to you? I know it sounds shallow, she conceded, with the self-awareness of a goldfish. But I need to be honest about my needs. I want a man who can provide security, who has ambition. Watching you just sitting around applying for jobs that are beneath you, it's changed how I see you. As I sat there, watching Rachel explain that my temporary unemployment had rendered me essentially unfuckable in her eyes, I made a split-second decision to keep the Tech Vault offer to myself. The dinner revelation I'd planned suddenly seemed naive. I understand, I said, my voice calm. You can't help who you're attracted to. She seemed surprised by my equanimity, perhaps expecting tears or protests. So, you get where I'm coming from? Completely, I assured her. You need someone successful, someone who can provide security. Relief washed over her face. I'm so glad you understand. I was worried you'd think I was being shallow. Oh, you are absolutely being shallow, I clarified. I just understand it. Her relief curdled. That's not fair. It's fine, Rachel. Really, we all have our priorities. Yours is apparently dating a W-2. She stood up, now angry. That's not what this is about. It literally is. You just spent 5 minutes explaining exactly that. I reopened my laptop. So what happens now? Are we breaking up? She crossed her arms, momentarily uncertain. I think we should take a break. I'm not saying it's over forever, but I need to reassess. A break, I repeated. Meaning you want to see other people? Translation, she already had someone lined up, probably the new regional director she'd been mentioning with suspicious frequency. I think that would be healthy, she said, with the forced gentleness of someone explaining death to a child, for both of us. Okay, I said simply. My calm acceptance seemed to unsettle her more than any argument would have. She lingered awkwardly, perhaps waiting for me to beg or bargain. When I didn't, she finally retreated to the bedroom, closing the door with deliberate softness that somehow felt more pointed than a slam. That night, I sent an email to Tech Vault accepting their offer and asking about their timeline. Their response came within the hour. We're thrilled. We understand the standard notice period is 2 weeks. Would starting in 3 weeks work for you? I confirmed that would be perfect, allowing me to take a short breather between jobs. Over the weekend, Rachel treated me like a sad museum exhibit, speaking in hushed, pitying tones when absolutely necessary and otherwise avoiding me. She made a show of creating a Hinge profile on Sunday afternoon, right at the kitchen counter where I was making a sandwich, subtle as a foghorn. By Monday morning, she'd already told at least 3 of our mutual friends about our situation. I know this because I received a concerned text from my buddy Chris. Heard about you and Rachel. Rough about the job situation, man. Let me know if you want to grab a beer. I didn't correct him. Instead, I replied, thanks, man, still figuring things out. Let Rachel control the narrative, for now. That Monday, I started preparing for my new job. While Rachel was at work, I converted our second bedroom into a proper home office, cleaned up my digital workspace, and brushed up on some specific technologies Tech Vault used. I took several prep calls with HR and IT to set up accounts and configure equipment they were shipping. When Rachel came home, I'd quickly switch to job boards or Netflix, maintaining the unemployed facade. She assumed I was just continuing my job search or wallowing. The following 3 weeks followed this pattern. During the day, I'd prepare for the new role, taking onboarding calls with headphones when Rachel was out of the apartment. I scheduled most video meetings during her work hours, and for the occasional evening call, I'd tell her I was doing interview prep or catching up with friends online. She was so convinced of my unemployment that she never questioned these explanations. When my official start date arrived, I began working from the home office with the door closed. Rachel, who left for work 2 hours before I started my day, never saw me in professional mode. When she'd text during the day, I'd respond casually as if I were still job hunting. The few times she came home early, I'd quickly switch my screen to job boards and mute any work calls. It was exhausting maintaining the charade, but oddly satisfying. On my second Friday at Tech Vault, just over 5 weeks since the breakup conversation, Rachel came home earlier than usual. She was dressed up, clearly planning to go out. She found me in the office, on a muted video call with my new team, discussing the security architecture I'd be working on. "Hey," she said, hovering in the doorway. "I'm going out with some work friends. Don't wait up." I gave her a thumbs up and continued my call after she left. After work, I finalized my direct deposit information and all the remaining HR paperwork. Then, and only then, did I update my LinkedIn profile. Excited to announce that I've joined TechVault as a principal security architect. After an unexpected departure from Money Matrix, I'm thrilled to take this next step in my career. Blessed onward security matters. I included the company logo and made sure my profile was set to notify my network of the update. I knew LinkedIn's algorithm wouldn't blast this to everyone immediately. Notifications tend to trickle out over hours or days, which suited my purposes perfectly. Then I ordered a massive amount of Thai food, opened a beer, and waited for the show to begin. The first text came around 10:30 p.m. from a former colleague. "Dude, TechVault? That's major. Congrats." By midnight, my phone had a steady trickle of notifications as friends and connections spotted the update. I responded graciously to each one, being sure to mention that it was a significant step up, both in responsibility and compensation, wherever appropriate. Rachel didn't text until the following morning. "Just saw your LinkedIn. We need to talk." I didn't respond. She tried again a few hours later. "Are you seriously ignoring me? After I just saw that you've been lying to me?" Still, I didn't respond. Later that evening, "I'm coming home. We need to talk right now." I turned my phone to silent and went to sleep in the spare room, door locked. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Rachel clattering around in the kitchen. I unlocked the door and walked out to find her making coffee with the aggressive energy of someone who might consider using the pot as a weapon. "Morning," I said casually, reaching for a mug. She spun around, eyes narrowed. "When were you going to tell me about the job?" "I wasn't," I answered honestly. "You made it clear that my employment status affected your attraction to me. That's valuable information about your character that I wouldn't have learned otherwise." "So you lied to me? For what, some petty revenge?" "I didn't lie. I just didn't correct your assumptions." I poured myself some coffee. "And it's not revenge. It's clarity." "Clarity? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I now clearly see what matters to you. It's not me. It's what I can provide. That's useful information when deciding whether to continue a relationship." Her expression shifted, the anger giving way to something calculating. "Look, I was upset about the layoff. I said some things I didn't really mean. You know I care about you, not your job." "That's not what you said last month. You explicitly said you weren't attracted to me anymore because I got laid off." I was frustrated. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated. "The thing is, Rachel, I think you did mean it. And that's okay. You're entitled to your priorities. They're just different from mine." She switched tactics, her voice softening. "Can we just start over? This job sounds amazing. I want to hear all about it. We should celebrate." "That's the thing," I said, keeping my tone light. "I don't want to celebrate with someone who is ready to throw me away because of a temporary setback. That's not how partnerships work." "You're being ridiculous. I never said I was throwing you away." "You created a Hinge profile at the kitchen counter. You told our friends we were on a break because I was unemployed. I was giving you space to figure things out. No, you were hedging your bets, and now that you've discovered I'm employed at a salary that probably triples my old one, suddenly you want to talk and start over." Her face flushed. "Triple? Are you serious?" The fact that this was the detail she latched onto told me everything I needed to know. "Rachel," I said as gently as I could, "I think you should continue with your plan to see other people, preferably people whose value to you won't fluctuate with their W-2. You can't just end things like this," she protested. 2 years together and you're throwing it away over one comment? It wasn't a comment. It was a worldview. You showed me who you are, and I believe you. The next few days were a cold war. Rachel oscillated between ignoring me completely and making desperate attempts at reconciliation, including a truly uncomfortable lingerie appearance in the home office that I'm still trying to scrub from my memory. It's hard to feel seduced by someone when you can still hear them saying they're not attracted to you anymore. Word gradually spread through our social circle about my new position. The LinkedIn algorithm ensured a steady trickle of notifications rather than an immediate blast, creating a slow burn revelation that was almost more satisfying. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. I wasn't poor John who got laid off and dumped. I was John who landed an amazing job while Rachel tried to monkey branch. I didn't correct either characterization, but I certainly didn't discourage the latter. Rachel, realizing that her reputation was taking a hit, tried a new approach: revisionist history. She began telling friends that she'd never said anything about my unemployment, that I had misunderstood her concerns, which were actually about my attitude during the job search. According to her new version, she'd been nothing but supportive, and I had changed once I got the new job, becoming arrogant and materialistic. Fortunately, Rachel had already done such a thorough job of painting me as an unemployed loser to these same friends that her sudden backpedaling lacked credibility. One friend, Melissa, actually called me to ask if I was okay, because Rachel made it sound like you were borderline suicidal about losing your job, but now she's saying you were actually being a jerk about it? None of it adds up. I simply told Melissa the truth, without embellishment. The contrast between my consistent story and Rachel's rapidly evolving narrative did not work in her favor. After 2 weeks of increasingly desperate attempts at reconciliation, Rachel finally accepted that it was over. We had an awkward discussion about the apartment lease, still had 4 months left. Since both our names were on the lease, we needed a formal solution. I contacted our landlord, explained the situation, and offered to take over the lease entirely given my new financial situation. The landlord was understanding. Apparently, couple breakups were a common reason for lease modifications. After a meeting where we all signed the paperwork, removing Rachel from the lease and transferring her portion of the security deposit to me, it was agreed that she would move out by the end of the following month, giving her a full 30 days to find a new place. She had apparently already started looking at options, having lined up a viewing at a friend's building, probably planning her exit strategy while she thought I was broke. Now she followed through on those plans, though undoubtedly with different emotions than she'd originally anticipated. The day she moved out was surprisingly anticlimactic. No dramatic speeches, no final desperate attempts to change my mind. Just the mundane logistics of separating 2 lives. Labeling boxes, deciding who keeps the blender, realizing you have way more mugs than any reasonable person needs. She left her key on the counter with a note that said simply, "I'm sorry it ended this way." I felt a strange mix of relief and melancholy as I looked around the half-empty apartment. Not because I missed her, but because I was mourning the relationship I thought we had. That night I ordered takeout, sat on my now solely owned couch, and reflected on the bullet I'd dodged. I realized that, if not for the layoff, I might never have seen this side of Rachel. We might have continued for years, maybe even married, before some other crisis revealed her conditional affection. In a weird way, getting laid off was one of the best things that ever happened to me. The epilogue to this story has been, I must admit, pretty satisfying. My new job is challenging but rewarding. The fully remote setup allowed me to travel for a month while working, something I'd always wanted to do but Rachel had always dismissed as irresponsible. I rented a place in Costa Rica, worked during the day, and surfed in the evenings. I posted about my travels on Instagram, where Rachel could still see my posts since neither of us had blocked the other. That weird post-breakup digital limbo, where you're no longer in each other's lives, but haven't taken the final step of severing all connections. A mutual friend later told me Rachel had been obsessively checking my social media and was visibly upset when she saw I was living my best life without her. 3 months after our breakup, Rachel started dating an investment banker who looks like he irons his jeans. 5 months after that, she texted me at 1 a.m. "He cheated. You were right about everything." I didn't respond, but I did send her a virtual gift card for a therapy session. Sometimes the best revenge is genuinely hoping someone gets the help they need. As for me, I'm still happily single, though I've been dating casually. My friends joke that I should put "survived a relationship with Rachel" on my dating profile as an achievement. I'm much more careful now about the people I let into my life, paying attention to how they react to both successes and setbacks. It's been a valuable, if painful, education. The money's nice too, I won't lie. Last week I replaced all the furniture Rachel had picked out with pieces I actually like. Turns out I'm not really a live, laugh, love, throw pillow guy. Who knew? Wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the awards and comments. To answer some common questions, yes, the job is real. I didn't exaggerate the salary. Cybersecurity architects with my experience level really do make that kind of money, especially at companies dealing with sensitive financial data. The job market is tough right now, but specialized skills still command high salaries. No, I didn't plan to trick Rachel by hiding the job offer. I was still in final negotiations when she dropped her bombshell, and I had genuinely planned to tell her about it in person that weekend. Her timing was unfortunate for her. For those asking if I feel bad about manipulating the situation, I didn't manipulate anything. I simply didn't correct her assumptions. She created the entire narrative herself. Several people have asked why I stayed with someone so materialistic for 2 years. The truth is, these values never came to the surface before because we never faced real adversity together. It's easy to be supportive when everything is going well. Character is revealed in crisis. About the apartment lease, yes, it was a formal process. We both had to sign documents with the landlord to remove her from the lease. She got her portion of the security deposit back directly from the landlord as part of the agreement. And yes, to the person who asked, the Thai food I ordered that night was pad see ew, and it was delicious. Some things in life are reliably good, unlike certain people. Update: 1 year later. It's been a wild, wild ride since my original post, and since many of you have messaged asking for an update, here goes. First, the job is still amazing. I've been promoted to Director of Security Architecture, which came with another bump in compensation and more stock options. The remote work continues to be a game changer. I've worked from 6 different countries in the past year. Turns out I'm actually more productive with an ocean view. Who would have guessed? Rachel occasionally pops up like a case of emotional herpes. She cycled through 3 more relationships that I know of, each one following a similar pattern: initial excitement, social media love bombing, then sudden, mysterious dissolution. Last I heard, she's dating a surgeon and has completely revamped her personality to include a newfound passion for medical humanities, whatever that is. We still have several mutual friends who occasionally update me, despite my protests that I genuinely don't need Rachel bulletins. The funniest development came about 3 months ago when Rachel applied for a sales position at TechVault. Chicago's tech scene is surprisingly small, and my company had been on a hiring spree that was all over local industry news and LinkedIn. The pharmaceutical sales background gave her relevant experience for our healthcare security vertical. Her resume somehow made it through initial screening, and due to our company's strict conflict of interest policies, HR proactively reached out to ask if I had any prior relationship with her before she advanced in the process. I disclosed our past relationship immediately and recused myself from any involvement. Company protocol meant I was completely removed from her application process and wasn't supposed to receive any updates. I would never have known what happened next if not for a completely chance encounter in the office cafeteria. I was visiting headquarters for quarterly planning and ran into Marcus from the sales hiring team. During casual lunch conversation, he mentioned they'd interviewed a pharmaceutical rep with amazing credentials on paper who completely fell apart when asked basic security scenario questions. Without knowing our connection, he shared that they'd passed on a candidate yesterday who just couldn't articulate why she wanted to transition to security sales specifically. It wasn't until he mentioned her previous company that I realized he was talking about Rachel. My personal life has taken a pleasant turn. I've been dating someone for about 6 months now. Claire, a marine biologist I met while working from that Costa Rica rental. Unlike Rachel, Claire's reaction to hearing about my layoff story was telling. That must have been stressful for both of you. Transitions are hard. No judgment, no focus on the salary, just empathy for a difficult situation. When I mentioned that my company was planning a potential restructuring, just routine business, not layoffs, her response was to suggest we take a weekend trip to decompress, not to update her Hinge profile. It's amazing how the right person can make you realize what you were missing before. The apartment is completely transformed now. No trace of Rachel remains. I finally got rid of that uncomfortable sectional she insisted was the perfect statement piece, despite the fact that sitting on it felt like punishment. My home now actually feels like mine. The most unexpected outcome of this whole saga has been a shift in my own values. The irony isn't lost on me that while Rachel was fixated on my earning potential, the experience made me care about money differently. Yes, the compensation is fantastic, but what I value most is the freedom and security it provides, not the status. Last month, I used some of my savings to help my younger brother launch his small business, something I might not have done before when I was caught up in Rachel's vision of success. It turns out that being a provider can mean many things beyond just impressing shallow partners with your tax bracket. For those who've gone through similar relationship implosions, I can tell you it gets better. That moment of clarity, when you see someone's true priorities and realize they don't align with yours, feels devastating at first. But it's actually a gift. It frees you from investing more time in something that was never going to fulfill you. Oh, and for the curious, yes, I'm still ordering that same Thai dish regularly. Some relationships may be conditional, but the relationship between me and Pad CU is eternal. At least some things in life are reliable. She announced, "I've been injecting you with testosterone blockers in your sleep for feminism." I calmly said, "Interesting." Then I had my hair tested, filed attempted poisoning charges, and called the FBI. The SWAT team raid during her gender studies presentation. This is going to sound completely unbelievable. If I hadn't lived through it, I'd be the first one calling bullshit. But every word is true, and I've got the court documents to prove it. I, 34M, met Diane, 32F, at a fundraiser for a local political candidate 3 years ago. I'm a pharmaceutical patent attorney. She was getting her PhD in gender studies at the university where the event was held. We hit it off immediately, despite our different backgrounds. She was brilliant, passionate, articulate, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were living together in my condo near downtown Boston. Things were good. Until they weren't. Looking back, there were warning signs I completely missed. The casual comments about how men are inherently prone to aggression due to hormonal influence. The not-so-subtle suggestions that I'd be more evolved if I were less stereotypically masculine. Her increasing involvement with a fringe academic group that published papers with titles like Chemical Solutions to Patriarchal Biology. But I was blind to it all. Classic case of love making you stupid. About a year into our relationship, I started experiencing strange symptoms. Fatigue, brain fog, decreased muscle mass despite maintaining my workout routine, low libido, mood swings. I initially chalked it up to stress. I was working on a major case involving patent infringement for a blockbuster drug, putting in 70-hour weeks. When the symptoms persisted, I saw my doctor. Blood tests showed my testosterone levels were abnormally low for my age. He suggested testosterone replacement therapy, but wanted to investigate why my levels had plummeted before starting treatment. Have you been exposed to any endocrine-disrupting chemicals? Changed your diet drastically? Started any new medications? He asked. None of the above. He ordered more tests, but nothing conclusive came back. I started the therapy, but oddly, my levels weren't responding as expected. It was like something was actively counteracting the treatment. Meanwhile, Diane had been acting strange. She seemed almost gleeful about my condition. She'd make comments like, "You're much nicer when you're not so amped up on testosterone," or "I love that you're getting in touch with your feminine side." I brushed these off as her academic perspective bleeding into our personal life. That was my first mistake. The revelation came during what was supposed to be a romantic dinner at our place. Diane had cooked, opened a bottle of wine, even lit candles. As we finished the meal, she seemed almost giddy. "I have something important to tell you," she said, refilling my wine glass. "Something exciting." I assumed she'd gotten news about her dissertation or landed a teaching position. Instead, what came out of her mouth changed everything. "I've been working on an independent research project," she began, her eyes bright with what I now recognize as fanaticism, examining the effects of reduced testosterone on behavioral patterns in cisgender males. I nodded, still clueless. "That sounds interesting. How's the data collection going?" She smiled. "Exceptionally well. I've been documenting the results for nearly 8 months now." Something in her tone made my skin crawl. 8 months? Have you started trials already?" "You could say that." She reached for my hand across the table. "You're my subject, Daniel. I've been injecting you with testosterone blockers while you sleep. For feminism, I felt like I'd been physically struck." "You've been what?" My voice rose with each word, hands shaking with a combination of rage and shock. "Administering a compound that blocks testosterone production and uptake. Just a small dose, 3 times a week. The changes have been remarkable. Your aggression levels are down 60%. You've displayed increased empathy. You're less domineering in conversations. It's working exactly as theorized." She said this as casually as if telling me she'd switched our coffee brand. She tried to touch my arm and I jerked away so violently I knocked over my wine glass. That's assault," I managed to say, my mind reeling. "You've been drugging me, without consent, for an unauthorized human experiment?" She waved dismissively. "It's for a greater purpose. My dissertation committee doesn't know the specific methodology, of course, but when they see the results, you're using me as an unwitting test subject for your dissertation?" I stood up so quickly, my chair fell backward. "That's not just assault, Diane. That's criminal. It's a violation of every medical ethics code in existence." Her expression hardened. "This is why I had to do it without telling you. Men never understand the importance of dismantling their own toxic biology. The compound is completely safe. I synthesized it myself using a formula developed by Dr. Harriman." "Who the hell is Dr. Harriman?" "My faculty advisor. Her work on chemical gender equalizers is groundbreaking, if underappreciated due to patriarchal scientific gatekeeping." I felt sick, literally and figuratively. "Where are these drugs? Where have you been keeping them?" "In my secure lab storage, obviously. I'm not careless." She seemed offended that I'd question her scientific rigor while ignoring the massive ethical breach. That's when my legal training kicked in. I recognized that my next actions would be crucial. I needed to get out, get safe, and get evidence before she could cover her tracks. "I need some air," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my keys and wallet, and left. I checked into a hotel downtown, my mind spinning with shock, betrayal, and growing rage. That night, I made a plan. First step, evidence collection. I needed proof of what she'd done. I contacted a forensic toxicologist the next morning, explaining that I suspected someone had been administering drugs to me without my knowledge. He recommended a hair test, which could detect substances I'd been exposed to over the past several months. The particular testosterone blockers used leave distinctive markers in hair keratin, making them ideal for this type of testing. Plus, the regular pattern of dosing would create a clear timeline in the hair sample. While waiting for the hair test results, I consulted 3 colleagues, a criminal defense attorney, a medical ethics expert, and a friend at the FDA. All were appropriately horrified by my situation. After consulting my attorney, I returned to the condo with a police escort to collect my essential belongings, a standard procedure in domestic cases. While there, I noticed a locked case in Diane's office closet. I pointed it out to the officers, explaining my suspicions. They documented it, and included it in the application for a search warrant, which was executed the following day. The search revealed vials, syringes, and a detailed log of treatments and observed effects dating back 8 months. She had meticulously documented everything precisely because she viewed it as legitimate research and intended to publish it with identifying details removed once she had proven her hypothesis. The hair test results came back positive for 2 substances: spironolactone, a testosterone blocker commonly prescribed for certain medical conditions, and a novel compound that the lab initially could only identify as an unusual androgen receptor antagonist. After consulting with pharmaceutical databases and specialists, which I had access to through my professional network, they matched it to an experimental drug called XR14 that had been rejected during early trials due to safety concerns. It was never approved for human use. Further investigation revealed that Dr. Harriman had previously worked at Meridian Pharmaceuticals before entering academia. She had maintained connections with former colleagues and had convinced a lab technician to provide samples of failed drug candidates by claiming she was conducting preliminary animal studies. The technician is now facing charges of his own. Even more disturbing, we discovered that Diane wasn't Dr. Harriman's first student to engage in this type of research. 2 other graduate students had been conducting similar unauthorized experiments on their partners. In one case, the partner had actually consented after being gradually indoctrinated into their radical views, a glimpse into what Diane had likely planned for me once her initial experiment yielded results. Armed with this evidence, I filed charges: assault and battery, poisoning, practicing medicine without a license, and violation of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Because the experimental drug XR14 had been illegally imported from a research lab in Switzerland, crossing international borders, and because the university received over $50 million in federal research grants annually, the case fell under FBI jurisdiction. The FDA's Office of Criminal Investigations became involved specifically because of the use of an unapproved investigational drug outside of authorized clinical trials, which is directly under their enforcement authority. I hadn't spoken to Diane during this time. She'd been calling and texting incessantly, alternating between concern, anger, and attempts to justify her actions as necessary for important research. I documented everything but didn't respond. The investigation proceeded over the next 2 months, building an airtight case. The initial arrest was based on the known substances, while the investigation into the experimental drug and the wider conspiracy continued. Diane was scheduled to present her preliminary findings at a departmental symposium titled Chemical Interventions in Masculine Behavioral Modification, a Case Study. She'd actually sent me an invitation, apparently believing I'd either forgiven her or accepted her warped rationalization. The arrest team consisted primarily of FBI agents and local police, with 2 hazardous materials specialists accompanying them due to concerns about unknown substances. While not a full tactical team, they did come prepared with protective equipment, given the unknown nature of the chemicals involved. They timed the arrest for the symposium specifically because it was a controlled environment with minimal risk to bystanders compared to a lab setting. The footage shows Diane at the podium, a PowerPoint slide behind her with a graph labeled Subject D's Testosterone Levels, 8-month decline. As officers stream in, her expression shifts from confusion to disbelief to outrage. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" she demands, apparently believing it's some kind of academic protest. When the lead agent announces she's under arrest and begins listing the charges, her face goes completely blank. As they handcuff her, she looks directly at the camera and says, "This is exactly the kind of aggressive institutional response that proves my research is necessary. The patriarchy fears chemical equalizers because they threaten male biological dominance." They led her out past stunned faculty and students, some of whom were already frantically Googling the charges, putting together what her case study actually involved. The aftermath was a legal and academic earthquake. Dr. Harriman was immediately placed on administrative leave while the tenure revocation process began. Diane was suspended from the PhD program pending investigation, with formal expulsion coming after an emergency meeting of the ethics committee. The university initially tried to distance itself from Diane's actions, claiming she had acted entirely outside institutional knowledge. However, when my legal team discovered emails showing that another graduate student had previously reported concerns about Dr. Harriman's private research projects to the department chair, who had dismissed them without investigation, their position became untenable. Facing potential punitive damages for negligent oversight, their insurer pushed for settlement. As for Diane, she took a plea deal rather than face a public trial. She's currently serving a 4-year sentence in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She's permanently banned from working in any research capacity or educational institution. I'm still dealing with the physical aftermath. My endocrinologist explained that the type of testosterone suppression I'd experienced would take 12 to 18 months to fully reverse, with some effects potentially being permanent. The combination of spironolactone and the experimental compound had not only blocked testosterone reception, but had also suppressed my body's natural production, essentially creating a temporary state of chemical castration. 6 months after stopping the exposure, I'm showing significant improvement, though my doctor projects a full hormonal rebalancing will take at least another year. The psychological impact has been harder to quantify. How do you trust again after something like this? How do you not question every drink, every meal, every person who has access to you when you're vulnerable? I've moved to a new condo in a secure building. I installed cameras everywhere. I bought a small safe for my bedroom where I lock up my drinks before going to sleep. It's paranoid, I know, but necessary for my peace of mind. I've also become an advocate for awareness about this type of abuse. It's more common than you might think, though usually not with such ideological motivations. My attorney says they've seen cases involving everything from partners administering psychiatric medications to control behavior, to performance-enhancing drugs given to teenage athletes by parents, to weight loss drugs slipped to spouses. The most chilling part of all this? Until that dinner, I had no idea. I trusted Diane completely. If she hadn't decided to reveal her research to me, apparently believing I'd be impressed or supportive once I understood her important work, she might have continued experimenting on me indefinitely. So if you've made it this far, take this away. If something feels off with your health, dig deeper. Document everything. And remember that abuse and control can wear many disguises, including the mask of academic research. Update: 6 months later, my health continues to improve, though the road to recovery is longer than initially hoped. I'm working with a therapist specializing in intimate partner abuse, which has been tremendously helpful. Diane's case has sparked a nationwide conversation about academic oversight and ethics in research. 3 universities have completely overhauled their IRB protocols as a direct result, implementing new safeguards specifically designed to detect shadow research conducted outside official channels. I received a settlement from the university, which I've used to establish a foundation for victims of similar abuse. We're working on improving detection protocols in emergency rooms and educating medical professionals about this emerging form of domestic abuse. And for those wondering, yes, I'm dating again slowly and cautiously. My current partner is a forensic accountant who finds my security measures perfectly reasonable. She brings her own sealed water bottle to restaurants too, so we're well matched in our informed paranoia. Life goes on, differently, but definitively forward. Final note: if you suspect someone is administering substances without your knowledge, get tested immediately. Hair tests can detect exposure from months ago, long after blood or urine tests would come up clean. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong with your body or mind, listen to that feeling.